Happy holidays, my fellow kin. Welcome back to the channel and welcome to another tournament recap. In today's episode, we'll take some time to do a deep dive analysis on my most recently and last attended RTT of 2024, the FDB Store Championship qualifier held on December 10th of this year. And I took a pretty unconventional list from what I usually run, and I wanted to just test out some key pieces that a lot of people have been talking about, maybe some things that were underutilized for myself specifically this year, test them out in a competitive setting and see how they would do and form my own opinion. And yes, UTHAR was one of those pieces. But before we go any further, of course, I want to give a massive thank you to our channel members, Jordan Stuckenschneider, Saturn ASMR, The Pulp, Fusel, Sam P, AustriTM, Dabadakis, Travis Taylor, Aaron Easley, Smoky Miniatures, and Mr. Wolf. Thank you so much for your ongoing support. It really does mean a lot. If you haven't reached out to me already on the Discord server and you are a channel member, please do so. Let me know so I can promote you on the server and you'll gain access to a new members exclusive channel. All right, so for those of you who have been following, this is my fourth RTT that I have attended this year. And this is, of course, from the Championship Qualifier Series at my local gaming store. I did qualify for the championship placing on my last RTT attendance, where I came first place, running my triple Land Fortress list, my control style list that I really like a lot. And I figured since it's the end of the year and people were kind of bringing lists that were a little bit unconventional, I wanted to try something a little bit different too. And I decided to take something as unconventional as a Votann list might get and still be what I would believe to be competitively viable. So in terms of event goals, I really just wanted to test out some of these unconventional combos or pieces that I haven't really had any experience with on the table as of yet, because I just found they were a little bit suboptimal. So I really just wanted to see how far I could take some of these unconventional pieces, if they got as much hate as they deserved, and if there was any other takeaway lessons I could learn along the way. So at the end of the day, I came 5th out of 15 players, taking home 2 wins, 0 draws, 1 losses. I scored 59 versus Necrons at 56 for game 1, 79 versus Chaos Demons at 78 for game 2, and I lost 29 to Vanguard Space Marines at 38. And for some of these games, there's an asterisk next to the score, and that is simply because we had called the games early, and at this event you were not supposed to play the rest of the game out, like talk it out and like flip cards. It was really like once the game is over or your opponent concedes because they're losing, you just call it, and whatever scores are up, you just lock those in. So we'll talk a little bit more about these in terms of score projection, what I think the game would have actually ended at as we get through some of these games that have the asterisks on it. But this is the end results that were locked in on BCP. Now, in terms of the list, like I said, I went for something a little bit more unconventional for myself. And right out the gate, you'll see a few of these changes here on the screen. The bulk of the list is still kind of like that control style that I enjoy having, where we have a lone character, we have the 2 squads of warriors to trade on objectives really easily, stack OC, do actions with. I have my 2 land fortresses, so down from 3, I went to 2 in this case, the Jaegers, and then 2 squads of 3 Pioneers, and of course 3 Sagittars. The things that kind of changed here, so I still have my 2x5 Iron Hearthguard squads. One's in Deep Strike, one's going to be in a land fortress, and the one in the land fortress is going to be accompanied by the long list enhancement E-Champ. I then have, of course, Appraising Glare in Deep Strike with my other Terminator squads so that I get access to using Appraising Glare, since I'm not going to be restricted, as they are not inside of a transport to start the game off. Some of the things that changed here, I ended up dropping one of my land fortresses to free up enough points to take a second Berserk squad, and I took UTHAR the Destined. Now, UTHAR the Destined is a pretty interesting piece. He has some cool abilities, like he reduces damage down to 1, which is always a nice deterrent. It makes him a little bit more survivable, and I was really interested in his ability to get dev wounds automatically in the shooting and fighting phase. I thought this could be a really techie piece if I really absolutely needed to trade something closer to my home objective and make sure I get 2 damage through clean. He could do that for me. And he could also, of course, do actions maybe a little bit better than what I was traditionally using, like an E-Champ, for example, as they'll be a little bit more durable and they won't simply die to something that speeds up the board or 3-inch deep strikes at the time to pick him up. Now, in terms of the Berserks, I ran 2 5-man squads. Each one is equipped with the Mauls and the grenade launcher, of course. I was debating running both of these as plasma axes, but my friends convinced me to test it out with 2 squads of 5 Mauls instead. I do think, like, going forward, I will always have one that has the axes, as I really like the ability to improve your consistency under damage output. Like, they do obviously hit really hard, everybody knows that, Of course, they could punch up quite significantly, being damage 3 and whatnot. But I do think like being able to hit on 2s and then wound on 2s for most things like marine bodies and be damage 2, AP 2 is just like a really clean profile to have. So I don't want to dismiss that. And this was something that I wished I had tried out at this event. I did take this list again and play one more game after the event with it into the new Khorne Demons to try it out. And for myself there, I did find that the plasma axes were nice to have, gaining access to that sweet profile on demand. So I don't want to dismiss the plasma axes. I just didn't take them for this list, but it is something that I would have liked to have included here. I just decided to go with Tamals in the end. All right, so game 1 was, of course, against Necrons. He was running a Hypercrypt detachment. His list was super elite heavy, so he was taking 3 C'tans. He had Void Dragon, Nightbringer, Transcendent, I believe, is the one that teleports when he advances. Then had 2 Doomsday Arcs. He had the Silent King, and then he had a couple of tech pieces like the Lone Op Hex Wraith characters who have the really nasty Overwatch, and he was running a squad of Hex Marks, I believe, that 5-man infantry unit. So just to kind of go up and down. He was playing a really high pressure list. You kind of just dump everything out in the open onto objectives and tell your opponent to deal with it. And if they can't, because it's a really big stat check, then they just kind of lose the game because you kill everything. So for deployment here, we were playing on mission E, Take and Hold, Prepared Positions, Hammer and Anvil deployment, and this was map 3. So this is one of my favorite configurations for to play on for WTC. I really like map 3 a lot. And the reason for that is that there's some pretty telegraphed spots for how you should be setting up and how you should be deploying that I think are pretty universal into basically any army you play against. So the first thing right out the gate is that you have this really nice place over here to stage on your natural expansion objective that is basically immune to any shooting at all from your opponent. So this is quite nice. You have this really solid bubble here where you could load up with as many things as you'd like, and there's literally no way for your opponent to shoot you if you're not touching the ruin, outside of indirect, of course, or maybe like coming up over here into your, basically into your deployment zone, which is not great for them to do. I usually like to start one Sagittar like on the line over here, something like this. And then with the scout, he could come up this way, and then he could stage very easily here like turn 1. So this is what I usually like to do for my deployment with a Sagittar here filled with warriors. Probably worth mentioning right now because I use this configuration for every like matchup I had at this event. I had 2 squads of Berserks inside of 1 land fortress. I had the other squad, the other land fortress was filled with 5 Terminators, and then I had 5 Terminators in Deep Strike, and then 3 warriors inside of each one of the Sagittars with 1 set on my home objective. So things to look out for here in this matchup. I knew he had 3-inch Deep Strike. It was take and hold. I didn't want to lose any points on my home objective, so I kind of just put my battle line like this, make a little triangle so they can't land within 3 inches of you. I had 1 Sagittar up here with warriors. I had 1 Sagittar that was over here with warriors as well. And this is a pretty nice little spot. So we did some talking and pre-measuring, and it looks like there's basically no way for him to interact with something that's staged behind this cargo plate with any of his Doomsday Arcs, as long as I didn't push up and extend past like this point here. So on my scout move, I just scouted in. Whether I got first or second, didn't matter. It was very safe. There was literally like no angle for him to get something behind this, unless he really like committed something this way, of course, to try to push me or kill me, like come down at this angle here, or like maybe if there was something, I think we had said like if he had come like here, there's or like out here in the open, there was like a tiny angle, something like that. But it was basically really safe. There was no way for him to get there without like literally trading away his Doomsday Arc instantly. So I found this a really nice spot because from here you could either drive your Sagittar out, you could send your warriors out. So this was another great spot for me to stage in. I also felt pretty comfortable with the Triple C'tan matchup because my list is really good at dealing with that because I have Hearthguard. It's probably the strongest matchup for Hearthguard in a land fortress because you are, on average, you guarantee kill a C'tan with the shooting of the land fortress and the shooting of the Hearthguard, like disembarking, popping sustain hits 2, the dev wounds, and then if you haven't already killed it by then, you just charge it and then it's dead. So I have like an auto delete button for C'tans. So I put 1 land fortress over here, like this way, like not touching the ruin, obviously. And this had my Hearthguard inside. And I love this spot. This is a great place to be because with a 10-inch move, you just pop out like somewhere here, like like this, somewhere like in this vicinity here, and you basically gain access to like everything, right? Like I could shoot down here, I could shoot like up here, I could shoot anywhere on this side, I could like maybe peek a little bit down and like clear this. Anyway, it's a great spot to be in. So you just touch right at the edge here. The ruin's not like fully on it at all, just like right at the edge, hidden. And then on your turn, you can move up 10 if you need to push. And then you gain access to like anything over here. It's a great spot to stage from. I really like this position. It's really safe. And if your opponent comes towards you too aggressively, which you want to happen as Votann, you just come out and you kill whatever comes there. So I figured I would play for these two objectives. And then on this side of the board here, I would just kind of stall primary as much as possible. I then had like 3 bikes here, something like this, 3 bikes here. I believe I had UTHAR, who was standing, I think UTHAR was standing in this corner here, and his job was literally just to, hey, I got sabotage done. That's what UTHAR's job was. He lived and died for recover assets, sabotage, things like that. And then in the middle here, I think I had another land fortress that was like somewhat like this. It looked pretty secure from here. His game plan, of course, with the berserks inside, 2 of them would be to come up and stage behind this ruin on my turn, and then also potentially, if I want to start engaging and fighting, just walk into this, be wholly within, and then you literally get to see like every objective. Like you could see this, you could see this, you could see this without any issues. And then I have berserks inside that could come out with a 3-inch move, a 3-inch disembark, a 5-inch move, and they could like trade like over here pretty reliably. They could come out this way and trade easily, or they could fight in the middle. So this is a great map to play on with my list. Really, really happy that we got this one for the first game here. And it forces my opponent to have to come out in the open as well to trade with me with his big pieces. Just from the nature of the game, the nature of the mission we were playing, and the nature of his list, of course. So on his side, he had something relatively defensive. I think he was pretty scared of getting shot by me early in the game and losing some pieces. So he had put 1 Doomsday Arc like back here. He had put, I think, another Doomsday Arc like over here or something. And he put Silent King like over here. He had like some tech pieces here like that. And I think over here he put some of the hex marks, I think, something like that, to screen. And then he had just like Votann Central. He had like Void Dragon, Nightbringer, and then he put the Transcendent, I believe, like over here or something to blink and teleport. And then the Silent King was right over here as well. Something like this. So he took a really defensive position, and I felt really good about this because the Cthans, if I'm not mistaken, they can't actually benefit from the detachment rule to teleport up and down 3 inches, except for the Transcendent, who just like blinks when he advances. So this meant that I had at least like 2 turns on any one of these objectives before I had to worry about getting charged or like fighting a Cthulhu, basically, which is exactly what I wanted. So we end up rolling. I get second, which is even better for me. Love going second on take and hold. And all I did was, as I said, moved everything up, staged well, like this Sagittarius scouted, then he moved and he was taking this objective for me. And then this guy moved up over here. So my opponent goes first, and he calls out that there's an angle of about like half an inch on my land fortress from here if he just moves his Doomsday Arc out. I was trying to stay fully hidden. I guess I missed this one, but it was like the slightest of angles. Had I moved like half a centimeter down, I would not have been shot. So he takes the shot on me, and I end up living, which is great because I did not want to lose this piece turn 1. So that was my fault. I suppose I should have explicitly called out that my intent is to not be shot through this little angle over here while I'm deploying, obviously, and keep my assets alive to actually play the game with. So anyway, survived that, went well. And then on my turn, so like he obviously pushes up a little bit like this. He brings these guys up here, and then he stays relatively hidden, I think, like with his Doomsday Arc over here, like ready to just come out and try to shoot and interact with the table. On my turn, as I said, I pushed everything up to its staging position. I took really good control of the board here. Everything was ready to go. This moved up. I believe at this point, I either brought my Sagittar out or I shot the little people out. I think I actually just brought my Sagittar up over here and tried to deny him some points because he had one of his Hexmark characters in the back. So he was just sitting on it with 1 OC, and I figured I could take that from him quite easily. So I brought my
Sagittar up here, and the only way for him to actually shoot me was if he had committed 2 turns of movement. So I don't think he had the movement. We had said he did not have the movement with his Doomsday Arc to come out here and be able to fully see me. So it was a 2-turn commitment. And then up here, there was absolutely no world where he was able to get an angle down here. So this was nice. I was able to like get a turn again on primary over here going second. So I was already building up a lead on primary going second, which is really strong on take and hold. If you're in that position, it's looking really good for you. So the big important thing here that I would say is that he had his goal turn. So he tried to threat overload me. He teleported his Transcendent Catan into the middle. He brought his Void Dragon up here. He brought his Nightbringer up here, something like this. And his Silent King teleported over here. So I had to deal with 4 major threats. And what do you think my 4 judge targets were at the start of the game? So I judged, of course, all 3 Catans and the Silent King. I hadn't ever played against the Silent King before. He's a tanky dude. I don't know if I would ever judge him again. It doesn't really seem worth it because he just has so many wounds on him, and like he regenerates, and he doesn't do, like, he does a lot. He's a really nice force multiplier. He has pretty punishing shots, but like he'll get his tokens if he takes a turn shooting and activating. So I don't know if I would judge this one again. I'd probably go for a little utility piece instead. So if he plays aggressively with it, I could easily pick it up if it comes in my backfield and try to take those command points from him. So this was basically how it looked on my turn. And of course, this is threat overload, so you got to take a second and just say, oh my god, what do I do? And the solution is I got to kill at least 2 Catans. So that's what I decided to do. I had to kill 2 Catans. I don't mind giving him this. I had access to this objective still. So I was like, if I could kill this and stack like some warriors on it, I could stall primary for him, and then I would get still my 5, 10, 15. So what I did was I put my Land Fortress out here. The Hearthguard disembarked. They shot everything into the Nightbringer. They killed the Nightbringer. And then I believe like they might have come out first and then charged into the Void Dragon or something like that. So anyway, I ended up killing this turn. I killed the Void Dragon, the Nightbringer, and then I tied up the Transcendent with 10 Berserks. So there were 10 Berserks inside over here fighting the Transcendent Catan. They got him pretty low actually, which was I was quite surprised. But it does make sense because when you're damaged 3 flat, it gets halved. It still goes to 2 because it rounds up. So he has to make 2 Feel No Pains for every unsuccessful save roll he makes. So it does add up quite nicely. And so I was pretty impressed with that. So I was stalling him over here for OC. Over here, I had taken this objective from him. And then over here, I had taken this. Or he was in the lead over here as well. But regardless, I got my 5, 10, 15. So this was nice. I picked up 2 of his big assets. On the next turn, I killed his Transcendent because he couldn't teleport away because he was in combat with me. And then from there, it was looking pretty rough for my opponent. There was one interesting thing I did over here that kind of got me this objective for basically the whole game. So I brought my Sagittar out this way, and I kind of wanted to just create like a little bit of pressure on this side of the board. So if this Doomsday Arc wants to, I think he had teleported this one over here after or something. So it was like if he wanted to, he had to choose between my Land Fortress, which wasn't on any primary but was still a big threat, or if he wanted to pick up my Sagittar, which was denying him primary on this objective. So he shoots the Sagittar, he kills it, and then I land my warriors out like in a little line like this, and I put one guy, just one base over here, just sitting there like that, and behind line of sight. So then he shoots with some other stuff from his Doomsday Arc. He picks up all 4, and then I got one guy left. And then this one guy is living over here, hidden, fully obscured. There's no way for anything to interact with him unless my opponent comes like on this side of the table, which he did not have the ability to do. And so I had 2 OC just kind of like continually stealing this objective from him for the last 2 turns of the game, which was pretty powerful. So my opponent called it at the end of round 4. So we just locked in the scores as is. I was ahead by 3 points at that point, but on his turn, he was not going to score any primary outside of his. I think my bikes had actually come down here, so I found a nice gap. This is what's also nice about playing against elite lists, is that it's difficult for them to screen your bikes. So I had landed my 3 bikes here. I had picked up this squad of the Hex Marks, I think. And then it was like, next turn I come here and I take your home objective. So there was no way for him to really get primary at all in round 5. I was going to get 15. and then he had like really like 2 or 3 utility pieces left, so unreliable to score some secondary. So he just called the game there, and then on my turn I was going to end up scoring 15, and then basically whatever secondary cards I drew. So the game ended at 59-56 officially. Okay, so game 2 into Chaos Demons. My opponent is a fantastic player. I think he's like top 100 Canada. He's a really great player, super nice guy, like incredibly helpful, and just like a really great guy to play against. And he was running kind of like a meme Christmas list at the event. He was taking Chaos Demons, all Nurgles. This is before the Nurgle detachment came out. He was running regular Chaos Demons Index, all Nurgle. And he had just like a bunch of great unclean ones, or like Rodigus. He had like some good utility pieces. And his list, like right out the gate, you look at this and you go, okay, it's pretty slow moving. He does have access to teleports, so you got to screen things out. He's not trying to kill you on damage here. He's just trying to really bog you down and deny you primary. That's literally what his list does. It stops you from playing the game. And so he had a 100 victory game 1, and he's a great player. So I felt like I had to impress and try my best here. So what we ended up doing was map 6 medium, the ritual, and I think the ritual here was crucial in helping me get a really nice advantage, because it forced him to really have to extend, because these objectives in the middle, they all go away, and if he wants to stop me from getting primary, he has to actually come to my side of the board. And again, as Votann, great, like bring it on, right? Like come to my side of the table, I'll delete anything that appears there. So that's exactly what happened, and what I was really hoping for. So for deployment, it wasn't anything too crazy. He had like his great unclean one like hidden here. Oops, I'll put red. So he had like one of his great unclean ones, or Rodigus, like over here. He had like another one over here. I think he had a Defiler in the back as well that he could like pick up and teleport. He had like 2 or 3 squads of, I think they were Plague Bearers, the battle line units. So they had like a lot of OC, because they had someone that had a flag with them that allowed them to get +1 OC. So each one was 3 OC, which was super annoying to deal with. So he had one that was kind of like stringing out over here, screening his backfield. He had one that was in deep strike, and then like another one I think that was somewhere over here. He had some of those bugs that fly. So I think he had put them here, and they were like really good utility pieces. I forget what they did exactly, but it was either -1 to be hit if they shoot me, or +1 to hit if he shoots me, something like that. So these guys were one of the threats I identified. I put judgment tokens on them. I put judgment tokens, of course, on the big boys. And then I think I had put tokens on his squad of Plague Bearers that were over here, that were going to start pressuring this side of the table. So on my side, again, I could have afforded to play really cagey, because these objectives didn't exist anymore. So what I did was I put my Jaegers over here on this side of the wall. I still felt like this was a good place for them to be, because I did not want my opponent to just freely come in with deep strike threats and like start pushing into my backfield over here, where it's easier for him to get line of sight, easier for him to get charges off and like threaten my home objective and whatever ritual tokens I have placed over here alongside the deployment zone. So I put these here. I had one Sagittar over here. This is a pretty standard build path that I do for deployment. So I have like my one Sagittar with warriors over here. He usually scouts up, something like that, like to be hidden over here, and he's like ready to just push up if he has to. I had one land fortress that was like over here, something like this. And what is nice about this matchup is that there isn't really any ranged anti-tank, so you don't really need to hide your land fortresses or any of your vehicles for that matter. Like you could literally stand out in the open and optimize your potential for actually getting staging points. And then of course lines of fire. So I had one land fortress over here, I think, with like my Hearthguard inside, and then I had like my bike screening. I had warriors, something like that. It wasn't too crazy. I had like one more Sagittar up here. I had more bikes somewhere here like this. So I really wasn't afraid of getting shot. For me, it was kind of just like I don't want to get tagged and I don't want to get bogged down. So that was the big goal. I tried to just pick things up as much as I could have, and we ended up, of course, it's the ritual. You're going to play cagey. There's no need to overextend. So I believe the setup looked like, I'll put a different color here for the objective markers, because there is something crucial that happened later in the game. So I believe I had one objective marker that was here. I had one that was like down here, something like this, over here. And I think I had made like a third one somewhere. Like it might have been in the middle over here. I'm not sure. I don't quite remember. Or maybe I was riding with 2. But anyway, the big takeaway was that, and of course my opponent mirrored that. And of course what the big takeaway here is that we started the game 30 minutes late, and we reached round 4 within the next 40 minutes total. So there was literally like by round 4, there was basically 1 single unit dead on his side and 1 single unit dead on mine. And we were playing a super cagey game. None of us wanted to overcommit and like just create an unnecessary fight because he has a lot of durability, of course. He wants to bog me down. I want to kill him if he comes to my side of the table. And there's no reason to, because we're just stacking primary on the ritual pretty easily and safely. So we're really just playing for secondaries to see who has the win condition with better secondary draws. And that's what was determining who was going to be the winner here. So what ended up happening, I was playing a super tight game. I was really happy with how it was going because, again, keep in mind, like, this is a great opponent. He got like a 100-point victory in his first game, got a 100-point victory in his third game after mine. So like a great player, knows what he's doing with his list. And the big mistake that I made was I had a Sagittar on top of this ritual objective. And I honestly hate the ritual for this. I'll be upfront about it because it's so messy to keep track of objective markers, because you can't put the big one, right? Like the big footprint objective marker without absolutely destroying like all the terrain and everything that's set up. You got to lift everything, tuck it under. So it's really annoying because you play with these little tokens. Like we had the kill team ones that we were using. And the problem is that it's difficult to be precise unless you explicitly state, I am intending to do this. Like I am purposefully screening you out 3 inches off of my objective. And I forgot to do that. And I just wasn't paying attention. Like I had a Sagittar sitting on top of this objective. And like we were playing the rest of the game like really meticulously, really tightly, just doing really efficient trades. And I lost track of like how much distance I was screening. So I think it was round 4, like his turn round 4, and he goes, I'm really sorry, you're gonna hate me for this, but I'm gonna 3-inch deep strike on your objective over here because there's a spot and I'm gonna steal it from you. And I said, shoot, man, like I forgot there was an objective marker under my card, to be honest with you. And he's like, listen, if you wanna take it back, I don't mind at all, if you want to reposition. And I said, you know what, no, I'm gonna live with the consequences of my actions, because I didn't intentionally, I wasn't there saying I'm gonna actually screen you out for a 3-inch deep strike. I just kind of haphazardly put my truck on it, wasn't really paying attention to that, and then I kind of just forgot it was there scoring primary the whole game while we focused tightly on secondaries. So I let him do his deep strike. He was able to fit 2 plague bearers, I believe, like just barely on it over here like this. Things that obviously repositioned and pushed up this way. And he had 2 plague bearers here and like a big squad just like trailing in the back. So he took this from me, and this was the swing. So at this, he denied me my points and he got primary when I should have. And I felt really discouraged at this point because I was playing a super tight game and this was such a stupid oversight on my part. And my opponent offered to not do it, but I just felt like it would be the bad thing to do. It'd be an ill fate. Like he was so great, he called it out for me and he gave me a chance to take it back, and I just felt like it'd be doing a disservice if I did. I'd be cheating myself. So I let him do it, and I was like, how can I recover from this? And so this is where things kind of swung back and forth. So like it was the end of the game now, and he had this objective, so I had to reposition a bunch of stuff. I ended up picking up this squad. I secured the objective for myself again. So it's the end of the game now, and we're in the last round. He does his turn, and he gets recover assets and something else. So what he does, and again, great player, so he's just telling me out loud, he's like, you're gonna probably get so-and-so for points next turn because you haven't drawn these cards yet. So it looks like if I hide, because I think I was missing no prisoners or something like that, he's like, if I pull everything back and I hide, there's really like no way for you to actually kill anything. And the only thing that he had left here on this side of the table was one of his characters, which was a Nurgling, I think, riding on a slug. I don't know what that character is, but he was doing recover assets for him to get him 6 points inside of my deployment zone. I didn't really have anything here because he had pushed heavy on this flank and was picking up a bunch of stuff. So this was all gone, basically. And he had his sled guy character kind of like, I think it was like somewhere here like this, so like just barely hidden. And we had measured. There was like no real way for me to get shots on him with my land fortress, which was over here. I just couldn't get wholly within the ruin or past this this line of sight blocker. So there was no way for me to shoot him. And then I had like 5 warriors over here, and I think I had 3 bikes or like 2 bikes left that could have gotten like barely into range. So he figured that he would probably win off of that, and he would get like that 3-point victory that he needed off of completing this action. So on my turn, I draw my cards and I get, I believe I had gotten no prisoners and something else. So like as projected, as predicted with the scoring, the only way for me to win was if I secured 2 points on no prisoners and I stopped his recover assets. So all I had here, like I said, were the Warriors. So the Warriors came up, they shot, they did what they could, they brought him down to 2 wounds. And then to finish him off, who else but UTHAR the Destined? UTHAR comes out this way. I think at this point, UTHAR was riding inside of the land fortress. And so UTHAR comes out this way, shoots, charges, and then I flip the dev wound to a 6, do 2 damage instantly, and I kill it, which stops the victory and effectively gives us a draw, but gives me a 1-point win. So UTHAR kind of came in clutch here. I don't know if I would have been able to kill this without UTHAR. Like, had it been a different character, sure, probably the same outcome, but it was really nice to have that reliability to know, okay, like you just lose. If I get this charge off, you lose because as long as I hit you once, I'd automatically wound you with a dev. So that was really cool to see. So a super tight game, really, really difficult, and we both played extremely well. Shout out to my opponent for giving me the chance to take back a 3-inch deep strike, which I ultimately ended up refusing because I didn't feel like it would be fair. That was my mistake, and I learned from that. And I never have to worry about it again because 3-inch deep strikes are gone from the game. So amazing. Thank the Emperor. I will say I felt a little bit crappy here with this win because I felt like this potentially could have lost me the game really badly, like everything that happened here. This was a big oversight. It's something that I historically have forgotten in the past as well, is to screen for a 3-inch deep strike, like on middle objectives. And it was just super annoying because I felt like, other than that, like I should have won this game if I did not forget to do this. And I felt a little bit discouraged because I thought I would be better than, than forgetting to do something so silly. But I guess it happens, and I ended up adjusting and playing around that, which I suppose in itself could be seen as something that's a difficult challenge to overcome, to come back from a deficit or a misplay. And it worked out really well, getting the ability to shut this down. Like, of course, had he been like on this side of the wall, maybe my charge would have been harder, maybe I wouldn't have been able to kill it. So it could also be he just felt like, yeah, like it's done, there's nothing that he could do to stop me. But then I ended up getting like UTHAR out, who has the dev wounds. So shout out to my opponent Seb for the absolutely great game and learning experience. Okay, so game 3, the last game of the day, and honestly the hardest game of the day. So this was Mission Q, Supply Drop, Rapid Escalation, Sweeping Engagement, and this was map 57, Medium Terrain for WTC. Now, right out the gate, there's a couple things I want to call out here. I hate this map with the list that I run, simply because it is difficult to maneuver around the board with land fortresses. This gap over here, you cannot pass with a land fortress, which means the only way that you get access to your expansion objective with a land fortress is by shooting it. So you could get like poke out a little bit and shoot up here, but you're stuck, you can't move. Or coming on this side of the board to deploy. So something like this, but again, this is risky because your opponent could get line of sight and shoot down, which means you really have to hide over here like this, and then take 1 turn to get here, 1 turn to get here, and then 1 turn to get out like over here. So it's really a 3-turn operation to get your land fortress out to play with this objective. Or alternatively, you do the same thing on this side, right? Like you're hidden over here, you come out 1, 2, 3, and you still get to shoot, and then 4, and then you're finally on the objective. So I really don't like this map for the build that I'm running with land fortresses. It's really difficult to get around. And I will also add that when we got to the table, some of the terrain features and the objective markers were not properly positioned. And what ended up happening is we made some readjustments, but ultimately, I guess this was a little bit tighter than it should have been because we had measured and assessed that a land fortress is not possible to pass through this side as well. So a really big limiting factor, because really the only way I have to access half of the objective markers is to take 3 turns to get there, outside of the one in the middle here where I could like drive up, or on this side, like being out of the game for 2 of the other objectives and kind of like coming up over here. And then I could kind of see a little bit on this side and I could fight for this objective. So it's difficult for me to get here. And usually this wouldn't be a problem, right? Because you could say, oh, okay, I'll just divert most of my forces to this one. It's less ideal for me to take it, but I could probably get more things on it And then on this one here, I'll just focus on trading and trying to deny points because it's a little bit easier for me to defend. But the issue is that this is supply drop. So one of these objectives is going away first. And unfortunately, after we deployed everything and I had tried to space things out as evenly as possible, this one went away first on round 4, this one went away on round 5, and then this one stayed till the end of the game. The most difficult one for me to interact with. So I wasn't a big fan of this setup for this map, and this mission as well, like supply drop for me is a little bit unfair because it does, I mean, this map is a little more favorable, a little bit more forgiving, I should say, because both people have access to like basically everything, but there is an innate advantage to some maps, right? Like depending on how you position, how you play, which objectives stay. Like here, it's difficult for me to play with this. I can't get on this, so right out the gate, I'm losing 5 OC potential to like stack on this objective. I have to really bring something out in the open for 2 turns before I can make it onto this and hopefully survive. So that was the first disadvantage, the first big one. The second one is the army I was playing against. This was a really, really bad matchup, in my opinion. This was Vanguard Space Marines that have an army-wide stealth. So into a BS4 army, where the only things that ignore stealth are your 2 bike squads, your 2x3 bikes, which probably aren't going to be trading, it's really tough because if you're judged, I'm still hitting you on 4s. Because 3s, like 4 goes to 3, goes back to 4. And if you're not judged, I'm hitting you on 5s. That's crazy, right? Like you're not going to do any damage. So it becomes really, your inconsistent shooting output becomes even more inconsistent and unreliable without access to any rerolls. So this just made it really difficult for me to interact with his army. On top of that, my opponent was running this mass MSU infantry list. I don't think he had any vehicles. He just had like a big Centurion brick. He had a big melt-a-gun brick that had deep strike access, I think, with one of his characters. And then he had like a small Terminator brick, and then the rest was all just infantry. And of course, with Vanguard, the other difficulty is that they're able to pick things up and put them down somewhere else on the table, which is extremely strong for something like supply drop, right? Because it doesn't ultimately matter how you position. You could just pick things up and like overload the side of the board after we determine which objective marker stays. And that's the one that you like just rush and secure. So this was a little bit of an unfavorable matchup for me. And I was a little bit afraid going into it. I had also never played against Vanguard Marines. So there was that factor as well of just being unsure overall about like damage output, the math behind what I needed to kill something with, how much damage he did in return. But I did my best to try to get a feel for it and try to have a game plan here. And this is a big takeaway that I learned from this event, which we'll talk about in the final slide here, just like recapping my thoughts on things that I learned. So I don't recall 100% of the deployment looked like. I think one of the big ones was that I had a land fortress over here. I had like a Sagittard. I was like over here, something like this. And my opponent had, oh yeah, and I put my Jaegers. This is a really massive one as well. I put my Jaegers over here. My thinking for this was that it was more valuable for me to get this objective marker with my Jaegers instead of having them on my natural expansion, because my natural expansion was difficult for me to fully support against his army that was mostly ranged. Like it's basically all ranged. So I've played this map against Death Guard, and it's not that bad because you stack bodies behind this objective marker with the Jaegers, and then every time Plague Marines come out, you just move away from the wall. And then if they charge, they're on this side, and then you have a land fortress here that just picks everything up consistently, and then like drives out and like gets on it by the end of the game, right? Not too bad. But against something that has like massive shooting, like the Centurions, which are terrifying to be receiving firepower from, it makes it a little bit more tricky. So maybe this was a mistake. Maybe I should have still put my Jaegers over here, but I ended up going for my Jaegers on this side to kind of brawl in the middle and get me potentially area denial and just have a larger footprint. I then had one Sagittar that was over here. This is the other key thing with warriors inside. And what I like to do on this map is there's a very thin line over here that you could stack a single row of models onto that your opponent basically can't get line of sight on. There's no way for them to shoot this unless they're like standing here in the middle. So this is a really neat little spot to hide as well. So I put one Sagittar here with warriors inside, and I put my Jaegers over here. This is kind of like the major things that were important. I think I had another land fortress that was over here, something like this maybe, that was ready to come up this way. And here I had my Berserkers, and then on this side I had my Hearthguard. So super quick on his end, he had a brick of Centurions that were like stacked over here like this, big footprint. He had his Terminators in Deep Strike, he had his Melta guys in Deep Strike. He had some JPI that were like over here. He had regular intercessors that were over here. And most critically, he had his lone op character. I think it has infiltrate as well. And this guy has uniquely a reactive move of 6 inches flat. And this is really important to keep in mind. So he had put this guy over here, something like this. Now at the start of the game, I judged the Centurion brick with 2. I judged the Melta brick with 2. And I had judged the Terminator brick with 2. And my last token, I ended up putting initially on this character. Just like my gut was telling me, put it on this character, he's playing for midfield, just put it on this. You either force him to give you 3 CP, or he's out of the game for like 3 turns if he falls back. So I put 2 tokens here, and then this is, I think, where Army Unfamiliarity came in. I was looking at his list, and I'm like, you know what, like, I don't really like the look of that command squad. It seems pretty durable, pretty tanky. I feel like that's going to be like the rapid ingress threat, or like, I don't even remember for deep strikes, but that was going to be like the threat that comes out over here. So I'm going to put 2 tokens, not on this character, and instead on the command squad, which was, I think, like hiding over here. And I was like, it'll be an easier time for me to kind of defend this. Like I could pop out with my land fortress this way if he comes. I could like push up here. So that was my line of thinking. And I think that was my first big mistake. The big mistake, and of course I'll also add against an MSU list, it becomes a little bit more difficult to determine which models receive your tokens, because yes, they're all marine bodies, which our army is fine into killing, not really token dependent, but when everything has stealth, now it becomes a little bit more challenging. So these simple marine bodies like an intercessor squad is actually a little bit more unlikely to die to a land fortress or to your terminators, making it really difficult for you to pick things up reliably. So what ended up happening was I moved my tokens from this guy and I put them on this. And I genuinely think this costed me the game. And I'll explain why in just a moment. My opponent, so I think I had gotten first turn here, and what I had done, I drew my cards for secondaries. I got Area Denial and Teleport Homers. So I said, great. What we're going to do is move this squad up. My Jaegers, they're going to stand right here, and they're going to get me both Area Denial and Teleport Homers. And that's just an easy 7 points. Turn 1. Great. What a massive lead. So what I also did was I set myself up for success over here by sending 5 warriors just to get a little bit more OC and secure this objective. So I got one guy touching. I think with the advance roll, they only made it this far. So one guy was on, and then I had a nice little line, something like this. So these guys are out for actions because they advanced. This guy over here, this Jaegers, I moved up just like hiding behind this line of sight because I didn't want to get shot by his army. So I had like 3 guys on the objective. And so what my opponent does is he reactive moves 6 inches flat and comes up right here behind this wall for line of sight. And now all of a sudden, this little 60, 70 point model has denied me the ability to get area denial. So I lost 5 points, which was massive. And I even lost the little one for 2 or 3 points because he's within 3 inches. So now suddenly this meant I had to actually deal with this guy. Like I had to kill this character to at least get area denial for 5. I'm not going to just like sacrifice this and get 2 points on the play homers. I want to get area denial. It's the easiest card to get. If you can't score area denial turn 1, like you've already lost. So what I decided to do is I charge with my Jaegers. They can't shoot because he's positioned on this side of the L and I'm on this side, so they can't see each other. So I charge him, and I got a full squad of 10 Jaegers fighting. And I don't kill it. I leave it alive on 1 wound. And it's like, I don't know, I think that's a bit below average, but if it was judged, it was dead for sure, and I would have got 3 command points. And if it was judged, maybe he wouldn't have come here in the middle, which meant I would have had 2 fully healthy units, perfectly staged and hidden, ready to like just contest this in any way possible. Then he walks on, then I reactive move, maybe I move block his charge with his JPI onto my battle line. And so it was just, there was a lot more potential for like tempo and like just the overall flow of the game had I dealt with this unit in the way I should have at the start, which I knew I should have done by just judging it twice. give 2 tokens to it. If he comes out, you get 3 CP, you kill it. If he runs away, it doesn't matter, he's hiding. So that was my first critical, crucial mistake, is letting this thing live. And of course it survived on 1 wound. He fought back, he picked up like 4 models. Then his JPI came out on his turn, just like cleaned up everything. His intercessors came out, they shot up like everything here, picked up my warriors, and now he had like 3 units on the middle objective. I didn't really have anything I could do to stop that from happening. So this one mistake costed me not only 7 points on secondaries, on 2 really easy secondaries to score turn 1, but it set me back, and I lost a lot of tempo because I lost 2 resources over here in the middle, and now he had 3 things stacked up. So this was an amazing play from my opponent. He told me he had the ability to reactive move 6 inches flat. I just didn't, I guess like the unfamiliarity of like seeing a play like that, like playing against this army, I didn't see it coming. And I knew I should have judged this just because of that potential for him to play with the middle. So I think the big takeaway for me here is like kind of like trust your gut and anticipate that your opponent is anticipating your secondary draws. Again, same thing like with the second game. My opponent hid most of his army at the end of the game because he knew all I had left were kill secondaries. So if I can't see him, I can't kill him, he just wins the game. And so this was kind of that idea, like something I think I'm going to start working on for 2025, is playing with more of a projection in mind for scoring. Like, what could my opponent possibly draw? What is he set up to do? And how can I stop that from being achieved? How can I deny him as many points as possible? So this is a big takeaway. And again, we'll talk about that more at the end of the video. The other thing that happened here, just to show you the strength of stealth and armor contempt before it was nerfed. So I had my land fortress here. We pre-measured. There was no way for him to walk out and shoot me. But of course, I like totally just didn't anticipate that he could pick up his unit and just place it an inch further than what he was able to move. And then he was able to get line of sight on like the tip of my land fortress. So he put everything into the land fortress. Turn 1 for him. It survived, which was great. And now he was exposed. So I said, great, I'm going to punish you for that. Somehow, I think that my land fortress was probably a little bit more on this side because I was able to get line of sight. So I popped out this way. I was able to get line of sight. I popped out this way, got line of sight. I brought my UTHAR up here, put everything into the brick. So 2 land fortresses, a UTHAR, and I only got 3 of the Centurions. So that's the power of stealth. That's the power of armor contempt, pre-nerfed. Just absolutely absorbed everything that I had. And now I was super exposed. So I had to leave, and then he teleported away. So the big thing that happened here is I was losing bad. I just like saw like what was happening for board state. Like this, I had nothing to really interact with. He had secured the middle fully, and these were the 2 objective markers that were going to stay the longest in the game. So on this side of the board, I got this objective marker fully. This was mine, but it only lasted for 1 round of scoring primary. So I was really behind on primary, and it's the end of round 3 now. And my opponent goes like, "Do you want a secret mission?" And I'm like, you know what? Like, yeah, like secret missions are a thing in the game. I definitely should take one. So I took the one to get my battle line into his deployment zone, which was extremely possible given that I had my battle line riding over here inside of one of my land fortresses. He had gotten out. I brought like some berserks here to hold, and then I got the other guys inside my warriors. So at this point, it's like round 3, and my land fortress is like over here with my battle line. So all I got to do is like move up here and then dump them out at the end of the game. So very attainable. On his side, the other criteria is I got to kill all his battle line. And he had traded, I had picked up 1 intercessor squad, and his second one was out in the open, like somewhere over here. And I think this is the other big mistake. I didn't properly assess my game plan. I assessed the board state, and I assessed how the game would look in the sense that I knew this was an unfavorable matchup, but I didn't really know what I could do about that, like what my win condition was. I couldn't assess that properly. And what my win condition is to just like take the time it takes to get everything onto this objective marker, potentially to deny and stall as much as possible. But more importantly, it was to just play for a secret mission and get like the 20 points, right? Like that was the easy one. All I had to do, because he exposed everything. Had I known from the start, like, you know, turn 2, I say, yeah, like the only way I win this is with a secret mission. Then I could have said, okay, I'm going to actually intentionally trade things away, like Hearthguard, whatever, anything to pick up this battle line unit, which again, totally possible, right? Like with a land fortress and Hearthguard. Pick this up and then declare I'm doing a secret mission on the end of round 3 and just walk up and score my primary points for doing that. That would have been a significant lead. It would have helped keep me in the game a little bit longer and maybe make things a little bit more reliant on scoring secondaries instead of just getting absolutely dominated on primary at the end of the game when this swings and counts for points. So really difficult matchup, and I think there were a few mistakes here that I made. The big one, of course, being not judging this target. I think not having a proper game plan for how to deal with an unfavorable mission, an unfavorable match for the table, and an unfavorable match up in terms of the army I'm playing against. I should have had a plan in place to account for this. And this was my plan that should have happened. So we ended up running out of time. And again, it was a really low scoring game because it's a supply drop. So I think at the end it was 38-29. We had called it at the end of round 3. And just for fun, we kind of like talked it out a bit, like what would have happened if like I did succeed with the secret mission, like I had charged in with my berserks from the land fortress and killed this. And it was like, oh, well, like, because now I know that's what you were doing. It's like you get out, I reactive move back, and it's like, yeah, like I can't reach you. So really the only way this plan would have worked is if I foresaw that this is what I wanted to do, that this was my win condition. And then I played into killing these intercessors before I declared I'm doing secret mission. So that was a big takeaway from this as well, which we'll talk about post-game recap. I will also add one little thing about UTHAR that was quite nice. So I did have UTHAR who was doing recover assets for me. At this point, I believe it was recover assets or it was sabotage. So he had been in one of these ruins, I think like over here or something, like doing it for me. And my opponent had his plasma inceptors ready to come down 3 inches away and interrupt this. And I reminded him that I reduce all damage down to 1. And then at that point he said, oh, it's not worth me risking to try to stop that. So I think any other character, you probably would risk doing that to get them into position. But against UTHAR, it was a deterrent. So that was pretty interesting as well. Just another positive note for our underloved and underappreciated named character. So I think in terms of takeaways, the biggest thing again is like just trusting your instinct. I knew that that was the right play to do, to put it on top of the character that was threatening the middle. Because it just had the biggest impact on the game. I should have just trusted my instinct on that it was the right move to make. It would have had a tremendous difference in terms of how the game progressed. I think the other important thing is just like budgeting time to predict points. So like point projections, things like that is super important because it makes a massive difference, as we saw in game 3 against Vanguard Marines. And then the last one is secret missions are still a thing. I play a lot of games, admittedly, not even really considering that secret missions are something as part of the Votann game plan. Because we aren't particularly great at doing any of them, but sometimes that could be your game plan. Like you could say, yeah, I'm not going to score much primary this game. I am going to actually play towards winning off of the secret mission if I set myself up correctly. So that is something that would have maybe helped make a difference in my game 3 when I knew it was an unfavorable board, an unfavorable mission, and the matchup was not that great. Okay, so what did I think overall about the list? I think it was fine. It's not my favorite list to run. I definitely prefer my triple land fortress a lot more. It leans fully into the control aspect, which I think I kind of compromised on in this case to have a little bit more trading pieces, which oftentimes didn't really fulfill the role I thought they would. So I think overall, I'd probably just stick with my 3 land fortress build for the actual championship event at the RTT store. So for that, I think I prefer my original list. I will say that if I had to run this list again, and I did end up taking it again, some of the changes that I would make would be one of the E-champs would have a Dark Star Axe. So I think this would be the one that's coming down from Deep Strike with Appraising Glare. I'd give him a Dark Star Axe because I felt like a few times I just needed, especially into Marines, I just needed the ability to deal with 2 wound models that have a Marine profile a little bit more efficiently into melee, and the low volume of attacks from the Hearthguard unit itself kind of makes them a little bit unreliable in melee. So I would actually kind of tech into that if I felt like I'd be playing against more Marines. It gives me a little bit more flexibility as well, considering that I'm losing out on 6 Twin Bolters on the 3rd Hecaton Land Fortress and an extra autocannon, which would be damage too. So I think that having something to compensate for that is necessary to have more play into Marines. So taking the Dark Star Axe is probably the first change I would make, using the same archetype, of course.
So I think the second change I would make would be with regards to the Berserks. I would take one squad with axes instead of two squads with mauls. I think this would be a little bit more flexible. Again, really strong into marine profiles because now you're effectively hitting on twos with something that is pretty nasty. You're still wounding marines on twos, you're damage two. So the damage three isn't all that necessary in those matchups, and you still have one on a single squad. But on the other 5-man squad, you have something that's a little bit more efficient, a little bit more reliable, consistent at getting damage through because you're hitting on twos, wounding on twos, and you're damage 2, AP 2. So 2, 2, 2, 2, and you have a sweep profile, which is pretty nice. The third change I would probably look to run is the configuration I have currently set up for how things are loaded into vehicles and transports. I want to have my Berserks in two different sides of the board. I think I would prefer having one always in a Sagittar to gain advantage with that scout move and just stage a little bit easier. And then I'd like to have one inside of the Land Fortress, which is kind of like an anti-charge deterrent or something that could play a little bit more central or push off to the side objectives. And I'd probably put my damage 3 mauls in the Land Fort since my Land Fort's going to be going for harder targets. And then I would put my Plasma Axe Berserks inside of one of the Sagittars to make it trade a little bit more efficiently on one of the expansion objectives. So those are my thoughts on the list. This is the total recap. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. Have you ever tried a list like this? Is something that you'd be curious to test out? What were some of the pieces here that surprised you in terms of their performances? I will say UTHAR was one of them. For me, I don't think he's by any means necessary. I probably, honestly, like he did win me one of the games, but I feel like an E-Champ probably could have done that as well because he gets the mortal wounds on the charge. But he is a nice little tech piece. He's a deterrent for now 6-inch deep strike, so we did lose maybe a little bit of value in that. And also he does have the dev wounds, which could be cute if you need to absolutely kill something. So overall, I don't think he's as bad as people say he is. He's definitely grown on me a little bit. And if I was running something like 5 or 6 Sagittar builds, I would probably take UTHAR in those list designs. But for the purposes of my control list, if I have space, I have to look at the list again with the point updates, but if I have room, I'd probably try taking him inside. Otherwise, he's not really worth dropping. I think I'd prefer having the E-Champ with a long list instead of UTHAR, just for that extra consistency in the damage output with the judgment tokens. But overall, I was really impressed with him. I really don't think he deserves all the hate he gets, and if you haven't tried him out already, guys, I really recommend you do. If you take him as something that's playing a little bit more aggressively, you're going to be probably disappointed with him. He's really there to act as like this defensive tech piece that could trade well if something comes close to him because he has the dev wound output, and then he also is basically unkillable to most of the higher threat targets like plasmas or like last cannons, things like that, that would usually pick up a squad or pick up a lone character especially. Against UTHAR, it's very likely to bounce in that case. So yeah, that's the list overall. Let me know what you guys think about it down in the comments below. Thank you guys so much for watching. Definitely a little bit longer than I anticipated for this video, but December's been a little bit quiet, so I just wanted to leave you guys with something nice after the holidays to really just sink your teeth into if you've been missing the Votann content. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please don't forget to subscribe, like, and leave a comment for me down below. Again, massive thank you to our channel members, our sponsor Card Brawlers, and our Discord server, which you could join free of charge by following the link down in the description below. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the new year with our special announcement.